afternoon, everyone. My name is Katie Crooks. I coordinate programs here at the Renwick Gallery, and it is my pleasure today to welcome you all to today's program. So join me in welcoming Susan Ford Bales and Joanne Galula.
I had the pleasure of interviewing Susan along with 4 other first families when we did the film, which is running downstairs as part of our exhibition called At Home in the White House. And it was a thrill to meet all of those members, but Susan was so relaxed and informal, had great stories, and so we thought it would be very fun for all of you to bring her so you could hear more of the stories that didn't make it into the very short film. Susan, I know that when you first walked through the White House with your mother, it was a little different occasion than it had been for a lot of the other first families. Can you describe that occasion?
Well, first of all, a lot of people don't realize that I worked at the White House as a summer job. My dad was a congressman at the time, and I was thinking it was probably 1973, and we sold, if you've ever been on a White House tour, there's a little station where you can buy guidebooks. And I was one of those people who sold guidebooks. And so my first summer job as a 15 or 16-year-old was selling guidebooks at the White House for the White House Historical Association. So I, of course, felt that I was smarter than my mother, and let's remember how old I was.
And how old were you?
17 years old. I was 17 when my dad became president. So we go to the White House to be toured by Clem Conger, who was the then curator of the White House. And Clem's showing Mother all these things, and I'm like, yeah, I know. I sell guidebooks here. I know. I've already heard all this. So it was, I was probably a little more comfortable in it than my mother was. Because I knew, like, the special agents that were standing in the hallway. It was like, oh, hi, Charlie, how are you? And so it was an unusual situation. I think that's a first.
Right. Do you know the first time that your mother ever went into the White House?
I don't know that. We had gone to the White House several times. When President Nixon was president, the Nixon family would have family events at the White House. We all hear about the Easter egg roll, and then at Christmas time there was a Christmas party, but they also used to have church services at the White House. And so we would go there and have church service in the East Room or the State Dining Room. I don't remember which room they did it in. And then there was a reception afterwards, and you went through a receiving line and you met the whole Nixon family. But I'm sure Mother went way back, probably in the Truman administration, because I know my mother went to Bess Truman's funeral, so that would have probably been the first time she ever was there.
I know very soon after your mother became First Lady, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and in fact became a spokesperson, I think, for the first time in the American public, speaking openly about that kind of cancer, leading a lot of women to become diagnosed and checked. And so you were asked to step in for your mother, and I thought that was a wonderful story.
Well, Mother was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1974, so actually September 28th of 1974, and we had only been in the White House for 6 weeks. And I was the only child living at home. My oldest brother, Mike, was getting his master's in divinity. Jack was at Utah finishing his college degree, and Steve decided to go to Montana and live on a ranch and get as far away from Washington as he possibly could. And I was in high school, which I have 3 high school classmates here with me today. So I was a senior in high school. And so anyway, one of the first receptions that was planned was the White House diplomatic reception, and it's white tie. It's one of the few times, Maria, where are you, that you wear white tie. We wore white tie for that, and we wore white tie for the Queen's visit. And a senior in high school doesn't normally wear formal dresses, much less long white gloves, and I've never worn long white gloves since. So I had to be my dad's date or escort or whatever you want to call it for the diplomatic reception. And it was really a fun evening. I was scared to death. I had never done anything like that, and it's just not the way I was raised. And so it was, but it was a very fun evening. I had my toes stepped on by a lot of ambassadors because they think they can dance, but they really can't. But it was really a fun evening and very memorable pictures. It's actually the day that we got Liberty, our golden retriever. It's a very memorable day.
Great. Evening. And do you remember your dress, your gown?
It was a red chiffon dress that I had bought at Loehmann's. I don't know if Loehmann's is still around. And because we were so used to living on a congressional salary, my mother was very budget conscious, and we went to Loehmann's a lot and picked up clothes. And at that time, occasionally I could wear my mother's clothes. Cokie Roberts, I was just in Michigan last week, and Cokie Roberts, who was one of Mother's eulogists recently, sent me a picture of my parents with her parents, Hale and Lindy Boggs. And I'm looking at that dress and I'm going, that's the dress that I wore the day my dad was sworn in. So Mother had obviously passed it down from her closet to my closet. So we were very budget conscious people. Save the pennies where you can.
Very good. Could you speak a little bit about how your mother made her stamp in terms of dinners, and did she select china? How did she work with the floral designers when you had a state dinner or a more formal dinner?
I will do the best I can, but Maria Downs, who was her social secretary, is here, and she probably could answer the question better than me. Mother used lots of china, and she liked to mix the china, and she liked to use, all depending how big the dinner was, there's only so many place settings, of course, of like the older, Abraham Lincoln. We couldn't use those for big dinners because there's very small amounts of china left that have been broken over the years and that sort of thing. But Mother liked to use different china, and she also would bring an artist, usually a sculpturist, come in and use their pieces of art as centerpieces. Even though my mother is a huge gardener and flower person and she loved flowers, her idea was to honor American artists. And let's share it, let's learn about them. And so that's what she did. If you go back and look at the pictures of her state dinners, she usually had a piece of sculpture, more so than flowers on table. And she always would find out, like for the entertainment, she would find out if they liked country western music. She would try and have the musician or the entertainer be of that sort of descent. And so she really wanted it to be an evening that they enjoyed and not that they were falling asleep in.
Could you tell us what your favorite room was in the White House?
My favorite room, and it's not because I liked the way it was decorated. It was creepy. I had to look it up literally on the internet because I couldn't remember the name of it. It was the treaty room. And the treaty room is on the second floor between the yellow oval room and the Lincoln bedroom. And when we lived there, it was decorated in the darkest hunter green, almost black, velvet walls, and there was a little powder room off of it that you couldn't even tell it was a door because of the way they had decorated. You had to push on it and it popped open. And it was just kind of a creepy room, and it was just interesting, and it had this huge table in it that obviously treaties and documents had been signed, and it just had this very warm, weird feeling about it, and it was very quiet. You could go in there and it was very quiet. I understand that other administrations have turned that into an office and done things differently with it, but that was one of my favorite. And then the solarium. I spent a lot of time in the solarium because that was, considering I was a senior in high school and a freshman in college, that was the most normal room of all.
And could you describe what the solarium was and where it was?
The solarium was an oval room. There's several oval rooms in the White House. On the very top third floor where us kids lived. And it was the most normal room. Mrs. Nixon had decorated it in a yellow quilted chintz sofas, and it had a game table, and you could put your feet on the table, and you weren't afraid you were going to break something. It just was what a normal living room was kind of like in everybody else's house, instead of an antique or something, and so you felt comfortable in there. And so we'd go up there and watch TV and play cards or do whatever, and then you could walk out. So if you're looking at the White House, if you look at the very top of it, you'll see the posts at the top, and the solarium looks through those posts. You really can't even see it because you look through those posts, and the solarium was on the south side of the White House, not Pennsylvania Avenue, but it looked straight out to the Washington Monument. It was fabulous, fabulous.
Could you explain a little bit about your senior prom? And that was a momentous event.
Yes, girls. Should we talk about the senior prom? They were all there too. My senior prom was at the White House, and I am still to date the only person who's had a senior prom at the White House. And I went to Holton Arms in Bethesda, Maryland, which was it still is a private girls' school in Bethesda. And I started off as a boarder when I was a freshman, and eventually became a day student when we moved to the White House, and the Secret Service would drive me to Bethesda every day. So when you're a senior, you start talking about your prom, and normally they were at hotels, and you had bands and that sort of thing. And I wasn't even on the prom committee. And the prom committee came to me and said, would it be possible for us to have the prom at the White House? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, it had never been done, so let me inquire. So there's what they call the usher's office. The usher's office is kind of the person in between the White House staff and the family. They represent and ask requests for the family. And so I went to the usher's office, not knowing what the answer would be. And then I had to go to my dad, who said, as long as the class pays for the food and pays for the flowers and it doesn't cost the federal government anything, I don't see why you couldn't use it. And so that's what we did. It was phenomenal. Our dream was to have the Beach Boys as the entertainment. And we thought they would do it for free, but they didn't offer that
Now
to
that's
us.
what a surprise!
So anyway, I don't even remember the name of our band. Do you all remember the name of our band?
We had two.
We did? Oh, okay.
We had a station on either side of the East Room, and when one took a break, the other one started up, so we always had music.
Oh. Cindy, you remember more than I do.
I was on the committee,
Okay.
but I don't remember the names.
No, I don't remember. And they never became anything, I'll guarantee you that. Oh,
They were
okay,
free.
so they were free. So we were
price was right.
We were a very budget conscious class. But the interesting thing was everybody in the class came to the prom. You know, most of the time you may get 50%, you may get 60%. Everybody in the class came. You didn't have a problem getting a date. Anybody could get a date for that. And all the parents, because there was only 74 girls in our class, all the parents wanted to be the chaperones. And of course, senior girls don't want your parents there. So we chose teachers, our favorite teachers, to be our chaperones that night. And so that's what we did.
And how was the White House set up? You know, what
Well,
events
the band was down in the stateroom, and then the food buffet was down in the
I thought the
dining
band was in the East Room.
East Room, excuse me, and the
East Room.
food was down in the dining room, which was on the other end, on the west end of the first floor. And then you had the yellow room, the red room, blue room, and green room to mingle in and do all that kind of stuff. I took some friends, because everybody would go to dinner ahead of time before you went to the prom, and I took 4 friends out on the Sequoia for a private dinner with our dates that night, and we went down the Potomac, which was probably one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. And then we came back and went to the prom. And my parents actually were out of country. They were in Egypt. And
How convenient.
it was really convenient. My mother flew in my Aunt Janet
I see.
to chaperone what was going on upstairs in the family quarters, because several girlfriends spent the night. My date was a college boy, and so he was staying at the house, and so my mother had to have somebody there to chaperone since we were staying. It was like, on the same floor. So it was fun. It was really fun. And I hope I get to keep the crown. I like the only prom crown. I will say that.
I think so. We know there have been multiple weddings, but you hold
I am the only.
senior prom. Yeah. Could you explain, I thought it was fun to hear what your mother and father did to kind of make their quarters their own.
I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, and we lived in a simple brick center hallway, salt box house. Didn't have a formal dining room. We had probably one of the first eat-in kitchens. We had a big table in the kitchen. There were 4 bedrooms upstairs, and my parents had a bathroom, and then I shared a bathroom with my 3 brothers. And so when I got to the White House, first of all, I was so excited to have my own bathroom. I was 17 years old, and I was finally getting a bathroom that I did not have to share with my brothers. It was so exciting. But Mother and Dad, because we really were simple people, brought their big overstuffed chairs. My dad had a blue leather chair that still sits in their den in California. And Mother brought her chair. So they brought things from their house and put them in. There used to be, and I don't know how it is now, there used to be a president's bedroom and a first lady's bedroom. And my parents have always slept together, and they said, we're not changing it now because we live in the White House. We're still going to sleep in the same bedroom. And so they slept in the first lady's bedroom. And my dad took the president's bedroom and put his knee machine in because he had bad knees. And so he had his little exercise things, and they had their 2 big overstuffed chairs that they would sit and watch TV in. And it was just a cute little den, but they brought things like that to make it home because it was really important to them for it to be the same. And actually, I think they brought their bed from Alexandria too.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So.
There's a great story that you told me about when Queen Elizabeth came.
Oh.
And I think everyone would enjoy hearing that story.
Queen Elizabeth came during the bicentennial, which we were lucky enough to have been in office during the bicentennial, which was a wonderful time. The celebrations and the gifts that we were sent at the White House, of the quilts and the ornaments, and it was just fabulous. It was a very unique time, and lots of celebrations. I mean, it's the most incredible July 4th I ever spent, of starting off in Valley Forge and then going to New York for the tall ships, and it was just an incredible day. But Queen Elizabeth came that year, and that was the other white tie dinner. And all of my brothers came home for it. And the boys usually weren't around for the state dinners and stuff, and they really didn't want to be a part of it, but Mother was like, you have to come, you need to be present. And so when you have a state visit, Mother and Dad went downstairs to greet them and then bring them up in the elevator, where then you proceed into the yellow oval room where you have cocktails or tea or whatever it is before you walk down the grand staircase to all the invited guests. And Mother and Dad come up the elevator, and my brother Jack is standing there as the elevator's door opens with his tuck shirt on, no studs, no cufflinks, no nothing, because he can't find them. And my dad is mortified because his shirt's wide open, and here's the Queen. And, my dad's like, I don't, and anyway, the Queen looked at my dad and said, it's okay, I have one of those at home too. So we do laugh a lot, and you have to laugh a lot.
I really love that story. I wondered, are there any particular feelings now looking back at the White House about living among such historic furnishings that you particularly inspired you or that you recall?
No, I guess if I went back and did it now, I would do it differently, but a lot of that has to do with age. I'm not sure I would say maturity. I've gotten older, I'm not sure how much more mature I've gotten. But everybody's administration is different because of the age that you are. I was a senior in high school and a freshman in college. I was not worried about the war in Vietnam. I was not worried about those things. Because when your father is the President of the United States, it's like, Dad's taking care of it. I really don't need to worry about it because he's got it taken care of. I was more concerned with what a normal high school or freshman in college is concerned about. Dates, grades, parties, what was I going to do for the weekend, and we were criticized. I mean, it just tells you how long ago. We were criticized for wearing blue jeans. I mean, my father, I rarely, if ever, would walk into the Oval Office without a tie on. I mean, it was just a respect. Things have changed drastically since we were in office. And so, yes, I would do things differently. I would have a much more appreciation for the furniture and the artwork and things like that. I really didn't then, so I would now.
But you do have a great story about the Lincoln bedroom, which shows a side to your mother that I would never have imagined.
The last night that I spent in the White House, I spent with I had a girlfriend by the name of Bo Firth, who I went to college with, and I was transferring from Mount Vernon College. Some of you remember Mount Vernon College. It's now part of George Washington over on Foxhall Road, where I did the first 2 years of college. And then I transferred to the University of Kansas. And so I left in January, and so my last night I went, okay, where do I want to sleep? What do I want to do for my last night? So I said, okay, Lincoln bedroom. And I mean, I've walked the second floor. I've looked for the ghost forever. I mean, I was going to see that ghost. And there's all kinds of things, like Julie Nixon said she and David wrote notes in closets and things somewhere, or left notes in, I never found them. I mean, you kind of do this. You go through drawers and open drawers thinking you're going to find some mystery, whatever. I never did. So anyway, Bo and I go to bed, and the Lincoln bed is huge. And we crawl in, and we're thinking, okay, we got to get up and drive. It was a 2-day drive to Kansas. And so we're laying there, and we go to sleep. Well, we had to be up at the crack of dawn to start our drive. And why I remember that Washington had gotten like 10 inches of snow that January. It would have been right before Carter's inaugural. Mm-hmm. And GW Parkway was closed, which is the way we'd planned on getting out of town. But anyway, my mother comes in at the crack of dawn with a sheet over her head going, ooh. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff she did. I mean, she really had an incredible sense of humor, and you have to have if you don't have a sense of humor, you'll never survive living there, because it's a most incredible place in the whole wide world, and those of us who've had the advantage of living there or privilege of living there are very connected in a very different way. For instance, at my mother's funeral almost 3 months ago, the fact that Mrs. Clinton came, Lyndon Johnson Robb, who I've known for a long time, came, Maria Shriver, who I knew from high school, President Bush 43 was there, Mrs. Bush 41 was there, Tricia Nixon and her husband Ed. Politics really don't matter once you've lived in this house. You become this brother-sisterhood that no one else can understand. And it's just an amazing group of people and an amazing house that gives us the privilege.
Well, Susan, thank you so much. I don't have any more questions, but I'm sure the audience has questions. And I know we have time, so
Okay.
I'd like to ask that you raise your hand, and Katie, who has the long blonde hair there, will bring you a microphone because we are taping this. And please feel free to ask questions.
Thank you. I was wondering, what is maybe your favorite thing about living in the White House and your least favorite thing?
The least is the easiest. The least favorite thing would have been the press and having to deal with living in the fishbowl kind of lifestyle. I would never survive in today's 24/7 news cycle, never survive. And they left us kids alone to some degree, but they did follow us some. So that was the least, it was just difficult. For instance, there was an article written when I graduated from high school in the Washington Post talking about the only reason that I graduated was because my dad was president of the United States. I was not an A student. I will tell you I was not an A student, and they will tell you I was not an A student. I was a BC student, but it was the meanest article. After your dad has just given your commencement address and you graduate from high school, which we all know is a huge deal for anybody, to have such a nasty article written about you in the paper. That's the worst. The best would be the fact that my dad probably was home more than he'd ever been home because of Air Force One. I mean, he still traveled and did stuff like that, but he was one of those people, he wanted to sleep in his own bed at night. And so he was home for dinner. When he was a congressman, he was constantly on the road, and he would be in Michigan doing things and that sort of thing, and so he was gone a lot. So the advantage of having Air Force One was he was home a lot more. And he was there to be more of a dad. So.
Hi. I was wondering if you had an occasion to return to the White House after your dad left office, and if so, what was that like?
We have returned on several different occasions. The last time I was there was almost 5 years ago when my dad passed away, and the White House drapes the president's portrait who has passed in black drapery, and the administration invited the family over to go see it. The time before that was when the Bushes were in office, and they let us go up to the second. Normally you don't get to go up into the family quarters, you just get to visit and that sort of thing. The Bushes let us go up into the family quarters and literally walk the halls and go find your own bedroom, and that was a very unique experience. I can still get White House tours. I mean, I know who I can call to do things like that. And you do get invited back. I had a very interesting conversation with Mrs. Obama at my mother's funeral, and Linda and I were standing there, and Cokie Roberts was standing there, and she was talking about, how do we get the executive branch and the Congress more together and all of this, and Cokie and Linda and all of us were saying, you all don't realize it's so different now, because when my dad was a congressman and their dads were congressmen, the families lived in Washington. I grew up with those kids. I grew up with Maria Shriver and the Kennedy kids. It didn't matter that you were a Republican or a Democrat. You just grew up together and got along. Today, the families live back in the districts, and the congressmen are commuting. And so there's none of this camaraderie to blend together as a family and support each other. And so we were telling Mrs. Obama about it. She was like, what can I do to try and get more people to get along? And so we were giving her ideas. So
I heard a wonderful compliment to your mother from Mrs. Carter when I interviewed Mrs. Carter. She said that the two of them became very good friends, and that they felt they were a formidable force.
they were.
Because when Mrs. Carter was trying to pass or support legislation for mental health coverage, your mother volunteered to help her with that. And so she said, we came to Washington, and Betty took the Republicans, and I took the Democrats, and none of them could say no.
Yeah, they really couldn't. I mean, and I was just with Mrs. Carter in September. She's asked me to go on one of her committees down there. And Mother and Mrs. Carter worked really hard on getting parity passed, and it's taken years to get parity passed. And it's right, Mother would go hit the House and the Republicans, and Mrs. Carter would go and work on the Democrats. And Mrs. Carter and I were both saying, it's so sad that parity's been passed, but it's not been enforced. It's a law.
Can you describe
Parity is all about mental health and getting mental health and alcohol and drug addiction equal coverage with your health insurance. And we've been trying to get it passed for 10 years because mental health and alcohol and drug addiction on your health insurance has always been an add-on that the company has to do an add-on, and this would make it of equal to getting a shot, to getting a visit from anybody. So, and it's never been enforced, and Mrs. Carter and I are just furious. So it may be me up on Capitol Hill with Mrs. Carter next.
Well,
so.
You would be a great representative.
Thank you.
Yes?
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit about your life now? I mean, I don't even know where you live.
I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I married, had 2 children, divorced my first husband, and remarried. And between my present husband, and as far as I'm concerned, only husband ever gonna, because I'm not doing that again. I'm too old. Live in Tulsa. His family's from Tulsa, so I moved there in 1989. We lived there for 9 years. And then we moved to Albuquerque and lived in Albuquerque for 11 years. And we just came back to Tulsa 3 years ago because his dad has dementia, and so we kind of came back to help take care of parents. We have 5 children between the 2 of us. He has 3 boys, and I have 2 girls. I have 2 grandchildren who are 5, and the baby's almost 2. He'll be 2 next weekend. And my stepsons live in Tulsa, so we see them a lot. And my daughters live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They both went to SMU, and so they're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so from my house to their front door is 237 miles, and it takes me 3 hours and 45 minutes to get to my grandchildren. So anyway, I do a lot of speaking, a lot of public speaking. I spend a lot of time, I've been in Michigan 3 times in the last month, and I'm going to be there again, doing stuff at the museum. My dad's museum is in Grand Rapids, but the library is in Ann Arbor. So last week I was in Ann Arbor introducing Andrea Mitchell, who did a hour-and-a-half presentation about the administration and the press and the news, and did a fabulous job. The week before, I had been in Grand Rapids because Justice John Paul Stevens came and spoke, and he's got a new book that's out called The 5 Chiefs, which I'm going to start soon. And he's fascinating. If you ever get a chance to go hear him speak, he's fascinating to listen to. And then Jim Baker will be back at the museum at the end of the month, so I'll be back. So I'm on the road a lot. I travel a lot. I was national spokesperson for breast cancer awareness for 16 years. So the grass does not grow underneath me very long.
Do we have any other questions? Yes?
Hi, Susan. You're excellent, and thank you very much. I was wondering how you felt your father's presidency and your mother's public performance and her bravery and her amazing personality affected your relationship as parent to child. I mean, had he not been in the presidency, do you feel your relationship with your parents would have been different?
That's interesting. I really hadn't thought about that. I guess the way I look at it is, to me, it's somewhat of a blessing that Mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and she was First Lady, and how lucky the American public is that she was willing to be so open and honest. As a lot of you know, you pretty much didn't say the word breast on TV back then. So it was a very courageous statement of her. And if she would have just been a congressman's wife or whatever, it wouldn't have made the news. It wouldn't have made a big deal. So for American women, I think we're just so blessed that she was our First Lady and she chose to be open and honest about it. My mother was raised by a very outgoing mother who I did not know my mother's mother. She had passed away before any of us kids were born. Her name was Hortense. But she was a very outgoing, civil rights, bang down buildings kind of I mean, there are articles I've read about her. So it makes me understand where my mother came from and being so outspoken. And as far as, so Mother and I were the only girls in the house. I mean, Mike was married, but they weren't living at home. So we really relied on each other. And so when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and here you are a senior in high school, you're trying to cut the cord because you're going to grow up and you're going to do all this stuff, and who cares about parents, because I'm cool and I know everything. But when your mother gets diagnosed with breast cancer, and hers was advanced stage 2, because she did have lymph node involvement, she really is lucky to be alive today. She's not alive today. See, I still am not there. She should have, probably died from breast cancer, I guess is the best way to put it. So in that sense, I was so afraid of losing her because of her diagnosis. I was probably not your typical senior cutting the cord kind of a thing. My dad and I have always been close. Being the only girl, I'm the youngest, so I'm the baby. My brothers will tell you, yes, she got spoiled and, she got anything she wanted. I wouldn't say that's true, but yeah, I was Daddy's favorite, But, I didn't play football. I mean, my dad did not know what to do with me when it came to sports, because girls, the only team sports then were field hockey, tennis. Girls weren't playing soccer on a team. So my dad would take me to the barn and watch me ride horses, because that's what I did. I danced because my mother was a dancer. I was not great at dancing, but I did it because that's what my mother wanted me to do. So my dad's connection was, we had really quiet times together and not sport activity type. I mean, we played tennis and did stuff like that, but he couldn't go watch me play football or, anything like that. If that answers your question, I'm sorry.
You had...
I have tried. I will play 9 holes, and I don't keep score. I love golf courses. I think they are beautiful, and I love gardening and flowers, so I love that. I do it for the social aspect, and it's not pretty, but I will go and I will have a blast, but 9 holes is about all you want to really experience.
You had said to me something about your father never had any aspirations to be president. It was an unusual circumstance, his becoming president. So therefore, his time in office, he didn't have an agenda, really. Would you agree with that?
No, and luckily, time has truly healed the nation, because I will guarantee you the reason he did not become elected as president was because of the pardon, and luckily the nation has been kind to him and realized that he truly made the best decision that we possibly could have for our country. But my dad didn't want to be president. The only job he ever wanted was to be Speaker of the House. That was his dream job. He wanted John McCormick, Carl Alberts, and Tip O'Neill's job so bad. And that was his aspiration. And so to be chosen as vice president, when Spiro Agnew stepped aside. And then our Constitution has never had to do this before. I mean, it's interesting. It was the 25th Amendment that caused all this. It was my parents' 25th wedding anniversary, year of their wedding anniversary. And my dad had been in Congress for 25 years. So, you know, when you say numbers do weird things, that's kind of a weird one. That's all he ever wanted to be, as the Speaker of the House. It's just, he had no agenda. I'm listening to Dick Cheney's book right now on my iPod, and it's really interesting to go back and relive some of this stuff. And I wasn't paying attention to it then, but it triggers a lot of things. I go, oh, yeah, I remember that. There are some former staff back there from the press office, and we all remember win buttons. And it was not a very popular program, but I still have mine. So, yeah, I mean, it just all depends. There are some people that want to become president. My dad never did, so.
But we're glad that he did.
I am.
Well, if there are no other questions, then I just want to thank you again for making the trip here and for being so cordial and open, and we really have loved having you.
Well, thank you.